So hi y'all, welcome. We're gonna start on our back so you can begin to come there and get comfortable, but I'm gonna stay seated for a while and just chat a little bit about the theme of the class. So I don't know about you, but sometimes, and it's happening to me lately, I find it very interesting when I can watch myself following old patterns, or more so my regular patterns of behavior and thinking and various forms. And it's interesting too that as I'm doing that right now, purely very aware of the patterns that I'm following, I'm fortunate enough to have the book Ghandi, His Life and Message for the World. And so last week's story came from this book, and this week's story will come from this book. And I emphasize that about patterns just to express that as long as if we are aware of our patterns, if we are aware of our nature, as Ghandi even experienced, then that's the key. That's just the start to change. And ultimately, we can't find any positive change, conscious change, unless we first develop that sense of awareness. So we're gonna start with that tonight, starting with our breath, and then we'll get into the story. So let's come to our back, if you haven't already, and place a block or a pillow. We're gonna come into a supported fish pose. A block or a pillow that's gonna be right in between the shoulder blades, and then another block or pillow that's gonna go under the head. And so it takes a little maneuvering to get situated. Right in between the shoulder blades so that when the palms rest up, there's a nice opening throughout the front of the chest, or throughout the chest and the front of the shoulders. And the block in a way that it supports the head. We don't want to find too much intense opening. We really just want to begin to bring our body into a space that it can relax into and get heavy. You can let the toes drop out towards the corners of the mat, and if you need to, sometimes I do, before getting still, you might find some wiggle, maybe through the wrists and ankles, maybe through the fingers and the toes, or extending the legs and the arms, whatever it is that your body's asking for before it really drops down. And then begin to find that stillness. And as I already have, maybe you take some audible breaths of release. Letting go whatever may have come up throughout the day. Letting go what may want to come to your mind in this space of stillness. And just putting that chatter aside just for this 1 hour. Recognizing that all of the outside movement will still be there after this practice. After you give your body and your energy the healing that it deserves. And then come to a natural breath in and out of the nose. And just notice that breath without any control, without any judgment. Looking on as an outside observer of that breath fluidly moving throughout the body. Noticing where it goes. And in turn, maybe noticing where it doesn't go. The spaces that might feel a little sticky or uninviting to that breath. Again, without judgment, without criticism, but rather with a loving awareness. Noticing maybe the temperature of the breath. Maybe the coolness as the air enters through the nasal passage. And the subtle warmth on your upper lip as it releases. Just continue being purely aware of that breathing. So my friend was visiting this past weekend, and she allowed me to do a yoga session with her. And I was talking a lot about that breath, and particularly about carrying the breath into certain spaces in the body. And she asked me what that means. What does it mean to carry the breath to the hips, or to allow the breath to be in the back? And so this made me realize that maybe this is a topic of importance, and maybe something that is not often highlighted in a yoga class. And the way that I explained it is, if you know where your body naturally breathes, just like if you know your patterns in life, then you can know where you need to work at. You can know where in your body to guide your breath. So for example, sometimes I get a tightness in my chest. And in my past, when I didn't realize what that tightness was, and I didn't know that I had control over that feeling, that would turn into anxiety. Now I know that when I start to feel that tightness in my chest, one of the key things that I can do is bring more expansion and contraction in that space. So breathing into that space where I feel the tension. So I share all that for us to come into our own breath practice, breath control in this space. If you'd like a different position, you can bring your feet together and knees apart. And if you're not comfortable with the blocks underneath you, you can just come all the way onto the ground. Hands can be on the low belly, or hands can still rest by the side. And I want you to begin just breathing through the low belly. Keeping that breath in the low belly as much as possible. And so it might help to keep hands on the low belly and just really feel that space right around the hip bones, around the navel. Push into the hands on the inhale. And pull back in towards the spine on the exhale. So visualizing the breath going to just that space, seeing if you can keep the breath out of the upper part of the lungs. And then in a time that feels right to you, begin to bring your awareness to your ribs. Maybe bring your hands to the ribs. And see if you can just take your breath to the ribs. So keeping the breath out of the navel area, and rather using the inhale to allow the ribs to lift up and out. And then the exhale to bring the ribs back together. Do that a few more rounds, keeping it out of the low belly and out of the chest. Noticing the concentration, the mental focus that it takes to keep the breath in that one focused area. And then when it feels natural, begin to transition up towards the chest. You can take your hand to the chest if it feels right. See if you can keep the breath out of the belly and the ribs, and instead just bring that breath into the chest. Feeling your heart expand into the hands as you breathe in. And find a natural contraction as you breathe out. Do that a few rounds. And then we'll bring all that together, allowing our breath to start with our low belly, work its way up to the ribs, and then all the way up into the chest. And then we'll carry it down just the way it came in from top to bottom. And so find the bottom of your next exhale. On your inhale, breathe in a third of the way just through the low belly and pause. Then breathe in 2/3, expanding the ribs, pause. 3/3, fill up, expanding the heart space, pause at the top. Let it go top to bottom, like you're drinking down a cool glass of water. Pause at the bottom. Again, 1/3 through the low belly, 2/3 through the ribs. Fill all the way up through the chest, hold, and then let it go. Do that 3 more times on your own. Good. And then after that 3rd round, find a natural breath. Extend your legs, extend your arms, stretch the body one side of the room to the next. Just because we have our habits and our patterns, it doesn't mean that things have to stay that way. It doesn't mean that there's no room for change. And that change starts with awareness. Roll to the side and push the blocks to the side. And then come onto your back. Pull your knees into your chest. Rock the body side to side. And then release feet to the ground. Feet are going to be really wide on the mat. Begin to windshield wiper the feet side to side. So forewarning, I've been biking a lot these past few days. So this practice is going to be a lot into the legs and the hips. Next time your knees drop to the right, hold to the right. If you don't feel the stretch in the hip flexor of the left side, lift your head up. See that your navel or your knee of the left leg is in line with the navel. And then release head and shoulders down. Imagine that I have my hand lightly around your left thigh towards the knee. And think about using the inhale to expand that left leg out of the hip socket. The exhale is going to subtly drop the knee towards the ground. So we're not forcing anything. We're allowing that breath to create its natural movement in the body. Inhaling to extend the leg out towards the front of the room. Exhale, naturally dropping that knee towards the ground. Do that 3 more times. Sending the breath from the left hip all the way down to the left knee. Good. Slowly come back to the center and over to the left side. Checking that the right knee is in line with the navel, and if not, that might mean that you need to walk your right foot out towards the right side, maybe even hanging off the mat a little bit. And then relax head and shoulders. Check to see that the chin is tucked towards the chest, enough to lengthen the back of the neck. And then same thing. Inhaling to subtly shift the right leg out of the hip socket. Exhale to allow a slight release. 4 more rounds. Let your breath move your body. Good. Inhale back to the center. Once again, hug the knees in towards the chest. Pull the knees tight in towards each other. Lift the head and give your knees a little kiss. Give yourself a little love, and then see how much you can really tuck your chin in towards your chest. Maybe your forehead comes close to the knees. So wrapping yourself in a tight, tight ball. And then take a big breath in and hold it at the top. When you exhale, sigh it out and release back, stretching from one side of the room to the next. Stretch long. Good. Bend your knees. We'll bring a block or a pillow or bolster under the hips for a supported bridge. So right in the place where your pant pockets would be. And then once you get yourself positioned, allow your hips to drop heavy. And after you've taken a few rounds of breath, you might find that your hips can drop even heavier. And I'm going to start reading a story to you. And this story is about Mahatma Gandhi's transformation. He was a young lawyer in South Africa, and he had gotten to be very successful as a lawyer. The author explains that on the whole, his life in South Africa resembled that of an Indian Europeanized by constant imitation of the white world. He had his comforts. He had a beautiful family life. He had his social standing. So I'll continue reading, but I invite you to begin to lift your feet above your hips, finding waterfall pose. You can stay there for as long as you like, and if a plow is in your practice, you might find plow, lifting your hips over your face. Sorry, lifting, your hips over your face. The knees might drop down towards the shoulders. But Gandhi had strange ideas. when it came to his household. And when his wife got upset about having to do the dirty work in the house, rather than having the untouchables do this dirty work for her, this irritated Ghandi, and it brought a lot of marital troubles. So this riled him so much, and he began to lose his temper. He told her, "I will not have this nonsense in my house." And he yanked her by the arm. She expressed, "Keep your house to yourself and let me go." I'll continue here in a moment. If you have your hips up over your face, go ahead and drop them down, minding the block that's underneath you. If your feet are up in waterfall, slowly release them down. And then together we'll all release the block and slowly lower the hips to the ground. Let the feet be wide. Let the knees drop in towards each other. Take a few rounds of breath in whatever means necessary for the body. And then what we're going to do is come into another supported fish pose. But this time I encourage you to stack 2 blocks or 2 pillows that in a place that would be in between the shoulders. And this is especially if the blocks are thin. If you have thicker blocks, you might just stick to 1. You might bring a pillow behind your head if you know that the front of your neck does not easily open. But if you'd like a lot of opening through the front of the body, you can see about placing those blocks or the single block in between your shoulder blades, and then dropping the head back so that the crown of the head rests on the ground and the front of the neck is completely open. Whether you're choosing to support the head or the head is dropped back, begin to open and close the mouth, really working open that jaw. You might even play with shifting the jaw forward and back, side to side. Maybe even making some funny faces. Just loosening up the facial and throat muscles. Those spaces that allow us to be more expressive and honest. Let's just take 3 more breaths here. Good. Slowly lift your way up and release the blocks from underneath you. Coming onto your back once again. Pausing in a momentary Shavasana position, kind of in the place that we started. You might just check in. Check in with the breath. Check in with your energy, with your mental state, and the body. And then once again, hug your knees to your chest and rock and roll up and down along the spine a few times, or just come straight up into a seat if that rocking does not feel good along your spine. And then we'll come up into a seat, and we're going to begin to really stretch out the quads. So what we're gonna start with the right foot. Pull the right foot in towards the right buttocks. And now if when you do this, that feels too much on your knee, I invite you to lay on your belly and pull the right foot in towards your buttocks from the belly. You'll still get that stretch in the hip flexor and the quad. So if you're here with me sitting up, just take a breath or two here, beginning to send your breath to the muscles that are feeling it in that right leg. You can choose to stay active in that left foot by letting the left toes point up, or you can just let the foot hang out. More active would, of course, require a little bit more energy. Now, if you feel that you're good here and you'd like a little bit more, you can begin to come back onto your forearms. If you choose that, make a point to lift the hips up and shift them forward to find release in the low back. If you find that you would still like to go a little bit deeper, you can release all the way onto the back, maybe onto a pillow. And again, if you choose that final option, lift the hips up, and you might even place your left foot on the ground and let the left knee drop in towards the center. That is going to help you find release in the low back in this final position. So I'm just going to have you breathe there for about 30 more seconds. Breathe into that space. So Ghandi, he was furious at his wife, and he grabbed her by the hand and he dragged her to the gate, opened it, and was about to push her out. She exclaimed, "Have you no shame? Where am I to go? I have no parents or relatives here. For heaven's sake, behave yourself and shut the door. Let us not be found making scenes like this." This was shocking for me to read because from what we know of Ghandi is he is the ultimate peacemaker. So how did he turn from being tempered and high-strung and kind of controlling to what he later became? Well, the story will keep unfolding. Slowly begin to lift up onto your seat. And if you're on your belly, go ahead and come onto your seat. We'll then find deer pose, bringing the left foot in front with the left knee bent, the right knee bent with the right foot behind you. And you can play around with the positioning of that right femur. The right knee can point kind of right towards the diagonal, or you might like for that right knee to be directly in line with the right hip. For me tonight, I'm more liking the diagonal, so it's up to you. We'll bring our hands, our fingertips, in front of both of our knees, and we'll just flow a little bit through the spine. So on the inhale, lift your chest and head up. And on the exhale, imagine that you're diving through water, tuck your nose down, chin to chest. Inhale, lift back up. So we're leading with the head. Exhale, release down, round through the spine. Inhale, rise back up over that wave. Do that a few more times. You might change the positioning. Just let the body carry you into whatever spaces it would like. Trusting that your body knows. Again, being just an outside observer. Without attachment, without judgment. Rather with loving curiosity. Next time you breathe in and rise up, hold the breath in. Squeeze the muscles at the pelvic floor. Squeeze navel into spine. Sip in a little bit more air if you can. When it's time to release, let go with the sigh. Fold the body forward. Rest on your forearms or your hands. You can bring a pillow or a bolster in front of you for just a little bit more support. You'll feel that stretch in the left hip. Maybe a subtle compression in the right hip. All is good. Breathe into those spaces. So Gandhi's wife caught him out. And this, of course, brought him back to his senses. Ghandi had a very violent nature, and his subsequent Mahatma calm was the product of long training in temperament control. He did not easily become an even-minded, desireless yogi. He had to remold himself, recognizing his deficiencies. He made a conscious effort to grow and change and restrain his bad impulses. He turned himself into a different person. It was a remarkable cause of second birth in one lifetime. This transformation began in South Africa, and the result was a self-remade man. In these last 3 breaths, see if you can drop deeper, grow heavier. And then on your next inhale, slowly rise up and extend both legs long. Do a little wiggle of the knees. And you might even pat out around the hips and the thighs, encouraging that blood flow, maybe even around the knees. And then bring your hands behind you, yogi's choice. Either hang out and relax in a hammock pose, or you can choose to bend the knees, place feet on the ground, and lift the hips up towards the sky, allowing the head to either the neck to be straight or maybe the head drops back, opening once more through the neck. And then if you're up, use the exhale to release. We'll extend the legs long. Pull the tush out from either side of the tailbone. And place palms flat on the ground next to the hips. Dandasana. So begin pushing away from the ground, lifting the spine tall. You might imagine that you have a string at the crown of your head, lifting you up towards the stars. Gently tuck the chin towards the chest to keep the back of the neck long. And then take a big breath in. See if you can lengthen any more. Pull navel to spine. And on your exhale, begin to walk yourself forward, keeping the back long, keeping the chest open. Once you find that subtle stretch, that first edge, stretching through the hamstrings and the low back, pause there. You might once again pull the flesh out, seeing if there's any more space for you to get more on the tailbone, which would in turn allow the pelvis to tilt forward, giving you more space to potentially find a deeper stretch. Take just 3 more rounds of breath in this space of length. You might play with what happens if you further pull your navel to your spine and you go any deeper, without forcing, but rather allowing. And then take a big breath in, hold it at the top. Sip in a little bit more air. When it's time to exhale, let go with the sigh. Let everything relax, fold forward. As always, you can place a bolster or a pillow underneath you for support. Allow your toes to fall out to the corners of the mat. Allow every muscle in the legs to just relax. Allow the belly to relax, the head to relax. At this point, I invite you to bring your breath into the back of the body. So just like we did earlier, sending the breath to the legs, to various spaces in the front of the body. I invite you to start that breath from the low back and allow it to work its way up all the way into the back of the chest and between the shoulder blades. On the exhale, release the breath from the same way that it came in. Do that 3 more times. Relax the jaw. Relax the forehead. Between now and 3 breaths from now, slowly rise up 1 vertebrae at a time. Keep everything relaxed. Good. We'll go to the other side, starting with the left leg. Again, you can go to your belly if it's too much on your knee to pull the left foot in towards the left hip. Choose what you want to do with that right leg. So consciously choose rather than allowing it to habitually happen. What do you actually need energetically right now? Take that option. And then you can stay lifted. You can shift back onto the forearms. Of course, shifting the hips up and forward, releasing the low back if you choose that. And if after a few rounds of breath here, you found some release, you'd like more of a stretch, go ahead and release yourself all the way down. If there's any pinching on the low back, please release, lift back up, or try placing the right foot on the ground, knee bent, and dropped in towards the center. Come back to your breath. Notice here where your breath wants to go. Notice here the texture and temperature of the breath. Notice here if you can guide the breath into the spaces that your body is needing it the most. If you're back all the way, slowly lift yourself up. Take your time. If you're on your belly, come up to your seat. And then we'll find deer positioning on the side with the right foot forward, left foot back. And it's okay if that left hip is lifted just a little bit. Of course, if there's any part in your body that feels sharpshooting pain, just readjust, use your props, maybe play with placing a blanket underneath the left hip. that might bring you a little bit more support in the compression side. And then once you found your position, hands in front, inhale, lift up tall. Exhale, we'll dive under. Inhale, rise up over that wave. And just continue riding that wave. You might close your eyes and just allow your body to move itself without control of the thinking mind. Allowing what needs to happen to happen. And then next time you rise up, take a big breath in, squeeze the pelvic floor muscles, navel to spine. Sip in a little bit more air. Let go with a sigh, round forward. You can release in front of the knee, maybe towards the right side. Maybe you play around with it or find 2 different positions in the amount of time that we're holding. Breathe into those spaces. Ghandi eventually left his wife and his family and went to live on a farm where he inaugurated his lifelong search for a diet which, while sustaining animal man, lifted the mind above the animal. Ghandi learned that we live, and he felt, not in order to feed, clothe, shelter, and pamper the body, but rather we provide for the body in order to live. Life begins after the needs of the body have been met. Yet he questioned how many people ruin life for the sake of rich living. He learned that the soul needs a temporary abode, but a clean mud hut will do just as well as a palace. Indeed, better. For when the physical absorbs the lion's share of man's effort, the spirit languishes, life loses content, and discontent appears. And so slowly with time, Ghandi became more and more simple, therefore less and less tempered and controlled by his mental state. Between now and 3 breaths from now, slowly lift yourself up. And then once again, extend your legs forward. Just like we did earlier, you can shake out the legs. Maybe this time you choose to rock the feet side to side, rotate through the ankles. You can do the same thing we did earlier. Whatever you feel like. And then you can rest in stillness in a hammock pose. You can find that same tabletop position that we found earlier, or you can try a different version, keeping the legs extended and lifting the hips up, neck straight, or head back. One more breath wherever you are. Next exhale, drop the hips down. And our final lifted pose, we're going to find frog. Now, this is a very intense inner hip opener, but I think y'all can do it. We're going to set ourselves up slowly. I want all of y'all to get your bolster or block or pillow, whatever you've got to support you in front. And then I'll have you begin opening up your knees so that you're on the inside. Now remove the block so you can kind of see me. So it's called frog for a reason. We're creating frog-like positions with our legs. So you can see my knee is in line with my hip, and then my ankles are in line with my knee. My feet are then flexed with the inside of my feet on the ground, and the feet pointing to the sides of the mat. So you can lift up onto your bolster, onto your hands. You can stay there for a while and then maybe eventually releasing down onto the forearm. We want to, as much as possible, keep the hips in line with the knees. And so I'll turn in the other direction so that you can see what I'm talking about. And this is what's going to really open up those hips. And just breathe. Invite your hips to release the tension that they're holding. Invite all the surrounding muscles to soften. You might have your feet soften a little bit as well. And if you've gone beyond your edge, pull those knees in a little bit more. Or stay lifted up onto your hands. Whatever you decide to do with this position, make sure that you're still breathing. Make sure that you're still allowing that conscious breath to go to the spaces that want to hold on the tightest. Reminding your body that it's safe. And that it's okay to release. It's okay to release old habits, old ways of thinking, old patterns. It's okay to let that stuff go. Take just 3 more breaths here and invite more softness. If you're on your forearms, slowly lift up onto your hands. This part gets tricky. Walk your feet in first. I find that's easier. Feet in towards each other. And then take the knees in an inch at a time. Be slow. And then once they're all the way in, sit back onto your feet, hands in your lap. And just pause long enough to notice. And then we'll come onto our back to complete the practice. We'll go directly into a gentle supine twist. So starting with feet on the ground, knees bent. Go ahead and lift the hips up and shift them to the left side of the mat. And then drop the knees towards the right side of the mat with the left knee stacked on top of the right. Gaze can be up or maybe over towards the left side. I recommend having that left hand in line with the left shoulder. Palm face up if you'd like a subtle back bend. That left palm face down if you'd like a stretch through the front left delt. And so you might just play around with it to see what feels better. If you'd like a deeper stretch, you can wrap the left leg around the right. Be there, breathe there. So Gandhi began learning about self-denial. And eventually, the idea and the practice of celibacy came into his life. And he learned that he had a sense of guilt. And so the author is explaining maybe the celibacy came from a sense of guilt. There's also the question that maybe the celibacy came from his wife having a sickness. And so he was left with the choice to either be between infidelity and chastity. But regardless of any reason, Gandhi associated it with his study of brahmacharya, which is a common Hindu practice, which is said to bring you towards Brahma or God. And brahmacharya is often understood as celibacy, but beyond that, it signifies the control of all the senses at all times and in all places in thought, word, and deed. So it includes, but also transcends sexual restraint. It embraces restraint in diet, emotions, and speech. It rules out violence, untruth, hate, and anger. It creates even-mindedness. It is desirelessness. Go ahead and bring your knees to the center and then walk them to the other side, taking the version of that supine twist that feels the most welcome for you. So Gandhi assumed that perfect brahmacharis are perfectly sinless. They're therefore near to God. They are like God. And to that, Gandhi aspired. It was the ultimate in self-transformation. Through all of this work in finding simplicity, in getting out of his mind, and even out of his body, and more into his soul's needs, away from his body and mind's desires. Gandhi learned to only give up a thing when you want some other condition so much that the thing has no longer any attraction for you, or when it seems to interfere with that which is more greatly desired. You too. We too can transform our lives, can alter our habits and our patterns in a way that becomes more beneficial not only to our personal lives, but also to the lives that surround us. And it all starts, or can start, right here on the yoga mat, right here with your breath, with your practice. Begin to draw your knees in towards the center and find your place of comfort for Shavasana, for final rest. I recommend placing a bolster or something under the knees so they can be slightly bent. Let the heels rest on the ground and the feet to drop out towards the corners of the mat. You might place a blanket over the body for weight or warmth. And when you get in a place where your body can be really comfortable. Take a final big breath in and let's squeeze every muscle in the body. Squeeze the hands, squeeze the feet, squeeze the legs, the buttocks, the belly, the face. Squeeze it all together. And when it's time to let the breath go, let go with a sigh and let go every muscle that you're holding. And just be. Begin to come back to the breath. Allow the energy of that breath to guide subtle movement in the body. Rotating the wrist and the ankles. Maybe flexing the hands and the feet. Stretching the arms along the ears. Reaching from one side of the room to the next, like you're just waking up for the day. And then roll over to your right side for energy or your left side for calm. Cradle your head with your arm, pull the knees up into the chest. Coming into a supported fetal pose. This is a good time to observe the patterns and habits that you walk with. And to consider without judgment, but with love, where there's room for alteration. And with gratitude in your heart, slowly push your way up into a comfortable seat. Bringing palms together, heart center, Anjali Mudra. And together on the next inhale, we'll carry our arms out and up. Palms together at the top. On the exhale, bring the thumb knuckles to the third eye for peace in the mind. Thumb knuckles to the lips for peace in the words. Thumb knuckles to the chest for peace in the heart. The God in me honors and bows to the God within each one of you. Thank you so much for your practice tonight. Namaste. Thank you all. You know where to find me, so any questions, just reach out. If you'd like a private session, I'm available for that as well. Just send me an email or feel free to text my cell phone. That email is flowintoyogallc@gmail.com. And you can also find my other contact information at flowintoyoga.offeringtree.com. Thank you so much and have a good one.